There's a glass of water sitting on your kitchen counter right now. Full, let's say. You filled it this morning. But every hour or so, someone walks by and takes a sip. Not a big gulp, just a sip. A small one. You barely notice. By the end of the day, you look down and the glass is empty. And you stand there thinking, I don't remember drinking that. That's your energy. That's what's happening to it. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic collapse. Just sip by sip by sip, all day long, until you're lying in bed at night wondering why you feel so hollow when you didn't even do anything hard. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about where it's actually going. There's an old concept in Hindu philosophy called prana. It just means life force, the vital energy that moves through you, the thing that makes you feel awake when you're awake and alive when you're alive. It's not mystical. You already know what it feels like. It's that quiet hum you have on a good morning when your mind is clear and your chest feels open and you haven't yet handed yourself over to the world. The ancient teachers treated prana like something precious, something you protect, not because it's fragile, but because it's finite on any given day. You wake up with a certain amount, and what you do with it, what you give it to, who you give it to, that determines whether you end the day feeling like a person or like a wrung-out cloth. Here's what that looks like in real life. You wake up, you reach for your phone. Before your feet even touch the floor, you're reading a comment someone left that irritates you, or you see a news headline that tightens something in your stomach, or you open a message from someone who needs something from you, and just like that, before breakfast, 2 sips are already gone from the glass. You didn't choose that. You didn't sit down and say, yes, I'd like to spend my first conscious moments of the day on someone else's agenda. It just happened.
And that's the thing about energy theft. It doesn't feel like theft. It feels like normal. The Taoists had a beautiful way of thinking about this. They watched water. They watched how a river moves. A river doesn't try to push through a boulder. It doesn't fight the rock. It goes around. It finds the path that costs the least and gives the most. Lao Tzu said the soft overcomes the hard, the gentle overcomes the rigid, which basically means stop throwing your force at things that don't move. Stop pouring yourself into resistance. But we do that constantly, right? We pour energy into arguments we'll never win, into people who've already made up their minds, into imaginary conversations with someone who hurt us 6 months ago, into worrying about Tuesday's meeting on a Sunday night, into refreshing an app 40 times hoping something will change when nothing has changed in the last 39. Each one of those is a sip from the glass, tiny, almost invisible, but real. Now there's a difference between spending energy and losing it. This is important. Spending energy means you chose it. You gave your attention to something that mattered, something that built something that left you tired but not empty. That's honest fatigue. That kind of tired actually feels kind of good. Losing energy is different. Losing energy is when it drains out the bottom of the glass through cracks you didn't even know were there. And most of us have more cracks than we think. Let me name a few. See if any of them feel familiar. The first one is other people's emotions. Not their problems, their emotions. There's a difference. You can help someone carry a heavy box. That costs effort, but it's clean. What's not clean is when you absorb their anxiety. When someone walks into a room stressed and 10 minutes later you're stressed and you don't even know why. That's not compassion, that's leaking.
You took their weather into your body and now you're soaked and they'd even ask you to stand in the rain. The Buddha talked about this. There's a teaching in the Salatha Sutta, sometimes called the Arrow Sutra. He said when a person is struck by an arrow, they feel pain, but then they often add a second arrow themselves, the mental suffering on top of the physical event, the worry about the pain, the anger that had happened, the story they build around it. In plain words, life shoots you once. You shoot yourself again by refusing to let it land and just be what it is. Most of the energy you lose to other people's moods is that second arrow. The event was small. A coworker was short with you. Someone didn't text back. A stranger was rude for no reason. That's the first arrow. Fine. But then you carry it for hours. You replay it. You assign it meaning. You build a courtroom in your head and prosecute the whole case. That's the second arrow. And that second arrow costs more than the first one ever did. The second crack in the glass is decision fatigue. Every tiny choice you make, what to eat, what to wear, whether to reply now or later, whether to watch this or read that, each one draws from the same well. The ancient teachers didn't use that phrase, but they understood the principle deeply. The Bhagavad Gita talks about a mind that's pulled in every direction being like a boat tossed on a rough sea. No anchor, no rudder, just reacting to every wave. And what is modern life if not wave after wave after wave? Notifications, options, opinions, 12 streaming services and nothing to watch. A phone that vibrates every 4 minutes with something that feels urgent but isn't. You spend so much energy just choosing, just sorting, just managing the incoming flood, that by the time you sit down to do the thing that actually matters to you, the glass is almost dry.
The third crack, and this one's quiet so you might miss it, is pretending. Performing a version of yourself that isn't quite you. Smiling when you're not happy. Saying yes when you mean no. Laughing at something that isn't funny because it's easier than silence. Keeping up an image on the internet that takes constant maintenance. Do you know how much energy it costs to hold a mask in place all day? Enormous amounts. Enormous. Because every moment you're pretending, there's a low-level tension between who you are and who you're showing, and that tension hums in the background like an old refrigerator. You stop noticing it, but it's always running, and it's always drawing power. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who was also a Stoic philosopher, he wrote in his private journal something that translates roughly to how much time he gains, who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only at what he himself does. He wasn't talking about ignoring people. He was talking about the massive amount of energy we bleed when we're constantly monitoring how we appear instead of just being where we are. So what do? How do you stop the sipping? You don't build a wall. That's the wrong instinct. Walls are expensive too. You've seen people who guard their energy so aggressively that they become cold, closed off, suspicious of everyone. That's not protection. That's just a different kind of exhaustion. Instead, think about the glass again. You can't always stop people from reaching for it, but you can notice when they do. That's the whole game, noticing. The Taoists called this Wu Wei, which people translate as non-action, but that's misleading. It really means not forcing. It means responding to what's actually happening instead of what you're afraid might happen. It means not fighting the current, but knowing which currents to step out of entirely. In practice, it looks like this. Someone sends you a message designed to provoke you. You read it, you feel the heat rise, and then, instead of firing back immediately, you set the phone down. You take one breath, not a deep, dramatic breath, just a normal one. And in that breath, you ask yourself a very simple question. Is this worth a sip? That's it. Is this worth a sip from my glass? Sometimes the answer is yes. Some things deserve your energy. Some fights are worth having. Some people are worth sitting with even when it's draining, because love costs something, and that's okay. The point isn't to become stingy with yourself. The point is to become honest about where it's going. Because right now, if you really tracked it, you'd probably find that maybe 30% of your energy goes toward things you actually care about. The rest just leaks into worry, into distraction, into performance, into the second arrow, into fights with people who'll never change, into feeds that leave you emptier than when you open them. There's a small practice that helps. It comes from the Buddhist tradition, but you don't need to be Buddhist to use it. At the end of the day, just review, not with judgment, just with curiosity. Where did my energy go today? What got a sip? Was it worth it? You don't have to fix anything, just see it, because the seeing changes everything. Once you notice a crack in the glass, you can't unnotice it. And slowly, without forcing, without building some complicated system, you start making different choices. Not dramatic ones, small ones. You leave the phone in the other room for the first hour of the morning. You stop explaining yourself to people who didn't ask. You let someone be wrong without needing to correct them. You say no to the thing that would look good but feel heavy. You walk away from a conversation that's going in circles. Each one of those is a sip you kept for yourself, and they add up. They add up fast. Remember, you don't feel drained because life is too hard. You feel drained because too many things are taking too little for you to notice any single one of them. It's death by 1,000 sips. And the cure isn't more energy. The cure is fewer leaks. There's a line from the Tao Te Ching, chapter 44. It says, your name or your body, which is dearer? Your body or your wealth, which is worth more? Which basically means stop trading the thing that keeps you alive for things that don't. Stop spending your aliveness on what barely matters. You wouldn't hand a stranger cash from your wallet every time they walked by. So why hand them your attention, your peace, your mourning? The glass fills back up. That's the kind part. Sleep helps. Silence helps. Being around people who don't take sips but instead sit with you and let the water settle, that helps. Doing one thing at a time instead of 7, that helps. Letting yourself be bored for 10 minutes without reaching for a screen, that helps more than you'd think. You don't need to protect your energy like it's something fragile. You need to respect it like it's something real, because it is. It's the most real thing you have. More real than your bank account, more real than your reputation, more real than whatever's trending right now. It's the stuff your actual life is made of. The minutes when you feel like yourself. The hours when your mind is clear enough to notice the sky, or laugh without thinking about it, or sit with someone you love and actually be there instead of performing being there. That's what's in the glass. That's what's being sipped away when you're not watching. So watch. Not anxiously, not rigidly, just the way you'd glance over at something precious sitting on the edge of a table. You don't guard it every second, you just stay aware of where it is. You notice when something gets too close, and once in a while, quietly, without making a big deal about it, you move it somewhere safer. Your glass is already filling again right now, this very moment. Just be a little more careful about who you let drink from it.